Good evening, everyone. Where's my gavel? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. All right. We welcome everyone to our meeting tonight. So we will begin with the opening prayer, and Anna Maria is going to give us the opening prayer. Anna Maria's had a very busy day. She was with us today at OCSTA in Toronto at the Shepherd Centre and the Toronto Catholic School Board, so she is doubly blessed today. Thank you.
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. A reading from the first book of Kings. Then the word of the Lord came to Elijah, saying, "Go out and stand on the mountain before the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by." Now there was a great wind, so strong that it was splitting the mountains and breaking rocks to pieces before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire a sound of sheer silence. When Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his mantle and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. The response is, "Calm us, Lord, and fill us with your presence." Lord, teach us to live life at a human pace, not a snail's pace and not a frantic pace, but a pace that gives us space and allows us to attend to what is really going on. Calm us, Lord, and fill us with your presence. Lord, give us the gift of quiet at those times when our hearts are in their most restless, and our lives at their most disjointed, and our work at its most chaotic. May pressure never tempt us to postpone your quiet coming. Lord, help us listen well to your call within and about us. As we invest ourselves in the detail of our work, let us always keep vividly before us the mission you have given us. May the passion for your kingdom never abate within us. We thank you, Lord, for your gift of silence, for the space and peace it brings. We thank you for the gift of yourself in the silence, and for the knowledge that you, whom we so easily neglect, are so wonderfully close and alive in our lives. As we discover you in the silence, may our lives be blessed with new depth and tranquility. Amen. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
Thank you, Anna Maria. I was going to ask the Vice Chair to comment on motions adopted in camera, but we haven't got that down to that part of in camera tonight, so we will go back into in camera after this meeting. So any additions to the agenda? All right, can I have a mover, please, for the agenda? Trustee Murray, seconded by Trustee Rowe. All in favour? Thank you. Any declarations of conflict of interest? Seeing none. There are no presentations. There are no delegations. Approval of the minutes of September the 5th, 2017. And, I will take Trustee Michael, but Trustee Carabella, you sent me an email earlier this evening with a couple of points on those. So do you wish to speak to them now?
Certainly. Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, I'd like to know what kind of criteria we use for putting business items on the business arising from previous meetings. So sometimes we discuss things, and I know you mark it down, and that'll come later on in a future meeting. And I was just thinking that those items could come here as well, could be posted here, so I don't forget, or because then I think something's coming up. For example, we were going to have an assessment of the language assessments that were done over the summertime. We were just talking about that last night. Yeah, so I had it on my notes, and I thought, instead of me trying to remember, that those things could be on that part of the agenda.
We'll add to the chart if trustees want that as an item. Usually it's policies that we've been listing in that table. But if you'd like an update down the road when we have that info, we'll be sure to include it in the table.
Fine, okay. Letter about the audit. Okay. So I thought that we were going to have it in our correspondence section in the public meeting, and I haven't seen it. Yeah, that's right. Yes, and through you, Madam Chair, I thought that letter that they sent us was going to be put on the correspondence in the letter.
So through you, Madam Chair, there are a number of items like this where we discuss and someone from senior staff say, yes, we'll do that, or we'll get on that, or we'll provide that. But there's no listing of those action items that we've given back to the staff. They're not motions, they're more informal. So if this could be a place where we can see things we've asked for and just have an update on when we can expect them.
Thank you.
Approval of minutes, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll read it. lengthy as it may be. Okay. Exemption to policy I-15, school name selection. Whereas Giacomo Corbaccio served the Halton Catholic District School Board for more than 26 years and was recognized across our district and across the province as a highly respected Catholic school leader. Whereas Giacomo Corbaccio oversaw the construction and successful completion of 29 schools across Halton Catholic District School Board. Whereas under Giacomo Corbaccio's steady leadership and vision, the Halton Catholic District School Board was consistently recognized for the excellent condition of its schools and buildings. Whereas through Giacomo Corbaccio's commitment to stewardship of resources, Halton Catholic schools have consistently demonstrated high facility condition index ratings and environmental savings. Whereas Giacomo Corbaccio demonstrated a keen understanding of the importance of meeting the needs and demands of a 21st century learning environment in Halton Catholic schools, incorporating new pedagogical standards into classroom design and functionality. Whereas Giacomo Corbaccio conveyed an extraordinary commitment to collaboration with staff, parents, and community partners, as evidenced through the many strong positive relationships he formed and nurtured. Whereas Giacomo Corbaccio maintained a strong active personal faith guided by gospel values. Whereas Giacomo Corbaccio, through his exceptional leadership, has been a passionate advocate for Catholic education within the province of Ontario, a true Catholic leader who embraced his calling to serve with integrity, with vision, and with humility, never losing sight of what is best for students. Be it resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board approve an exception to policy I-15, school name selection, and declare that the next newly constructed Halton Catholic Elementary School be named Giacomo A. Corbaccio Catholic Elementary School. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Through you, Madam Chair, I want to thank Trustee Intomasi for bringing this motion forward. I think it's very important.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, do I not get to speak to the motion first?
Oh.
Sorry.
I
Did this work? I at least want to get my say. Okay. Thank you. I didn't time it, so I really don't know how long it is. Okay. I think the motion outlines Giacomo's contributions in the person he was. There are his William J. Wales and Oxoa Awards, which establish district and provincial recognition, and they are significant both for his work and our board. We know that Giacomo made his mark on all levels and was highly esteemed. I'd like to stress that this motion is for an exception. It's not intended to be precedent-setting. We have lost other good people who have certainly warranted various levels of recognition. We have solid policy, which we formulated for good reason, and I don't make this request lightly. I recognize there are other ways to acknowledge an individual who has been given much to a system or an organization, such as right here at the Education Center, which is named after past Director Cliff Burns. Yet we have schools who are not named after saints, such as Jean Vanier, who is still alive, and Bishop Redding. Hamilton has several schools named after bishops and buildings to recognize clergy. Of note, I want you to know, St. Giacomo is a real saint, or San Giacomo in Italian, as is more recognizably known, translate to St. James, so we would still be within keeping of a saint's domain. Toronto has approximately 14 schools named after clergy, trustees, and a Mother Superior. Other boards have deemed other individuals also worthy of having schools named after them, including politicians. Exceptions that have been made in recognition of individuals who is to make notable contributions to our Catholic system, locally or otherwise. But respectfully, this motion isn't about other boards. It's about our board. It's about our Giacomo. In this case, the groundbreaking taking place this month will be a milestone for our 30th school that Giacomo oversaw in his 27 years with us. Understandably, not everyone in the system knows of Giacomo Corbaccio or his contributions, so this is our opportunity to inform people and lend his name as an exemplary leader. Because in sincerity, they should know how a contemporary, practicing Catholic can live their faith in a substantial way. He was a true Catholic leader of Ontario education system and took our board to highest possible standards in the province every day for 27 years straight. He fought tooth and nail in the most respectful, diligent, and patient manner through the everyday bureaucracy, leading his team and the contracted professionals to find the best possible way to further Catholic learning environments while sustaining Pope Francis's teaching of respecting our earth. Giacomo understood how to push the limits of brick and mortar to consistently high standards of achievement to meet and enrich program development. We want people to ask why this man is being honored. It is a wonderful opportunity to present him as a modern-day example of how you can honor God through servitude via the development and growth of children. Giacomo was a real human with deep faith. He lived, loved, and worked with his faith as a guidepost. I include myself when I say few of us attain that quiet kind of devotion and grace. Giacomo was beyond reproach of his intentions and where his heart lay. A saint? No, he wasn't, but a living, breathing, faith-filled man with immense humility who just had foresight and determination to ensure our Catholic system not only existed, but thrived in a standard of excellence. So I'm just asking each and every one of you to support this exception to our policy so we can recognize and honor a humble man for exceptional Catholic leadership qualities.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I want to thank Trustee Intimasi for bringing this motion forward. I think it's well deserved, and I'm hoping that we'll all support the motion. One concern I have with the motion is should a consolidation of schools come before the naming of a new school, that we insist that only a new building, not consolidating two schools where parents will have some connection to previous names. So whenever we build the next school that isn't consolidating, then I would think that might be something we add to your motion.
Yeah, the consolidation of schools has a different policy, as everything does. Sorry?
Naming of a school in a consolidation or naming the school in a new school. So
yes,
I want to be sure that if we're naming a new school after Giacomo, that it not involve two schools that are previously named.
Absolutely. Thank you. Trustee Intimasi, you want to?
To that comment, Madam Chair, I would just like to see, being that it's the 30th school and we're breaking ground, we're having an official breaking next week, that if this does pass, that would then be designated. Thank you.
And Maria, did you wish to say anything? No, okay. Trustee Rowe?
Thank you, Madam Chair. To congratulate Trustee Intimasi on the wonderful reflection that she gave, and just ask the question whether the idea was put to the bishop at all.
Yes, the idea was put to the bishop, and that we have it in writing that the bishop is fine with it. I believe that was what we got back, Paula? Yes. And I'd also mentioned the possibility to the pastor in Milton too, knowing that this was coming up. Okay. Trustee Christina? Nothing? Okay. Trustee Danko? Vice Chair Trites? Oh, we're going very quickly here. Trustee Murray?
For the nice sentiments vote. It was lovely.
Trustee Michael? Trustee Intimasi, did you want to say anything before I pass over you? Thank you. Trustee Ingrid?
Just to echo Mr. Marai's words about how beautiful this policy was, and to congratulate Ms. Intimasi.
Trustee Carabella?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to pay a lot of respect to Giacomo and to his family, and I'm sorry for their loss. I've spoken with Arlene about this motion, and for me, I find it's too fast. The whole process of canonization is a lengthy process that studies the heroic virtue of the individual through going through their writings, the speech, interviews. Then there's a phase of beatification that includes two approved miracles, a process of canonization, and I think that I like that the schools be named after saints as an example that children can strive for. They can. I was on the naming committee for one school, and I was very impressed by a comment. One of the people on the committee said that they really would like their school to be filled with quotes and themes that help inspire the children in their faith. and she was proposing a saint that has a lot of beautiful quotes that they can use to teach the children. And I also wondered about not having the community input from parents themselves being part of the process. So those were the comments I'd like to make, and they're in no way take away from the greatness of Giacomo. Thank you.
Thank you. Are we ready for the vote? Everybody's ready for the vote? Okay. A recorded vote, the chair will vote. Trustee Quinn.
In favor.
Trustee Anna Maria.
In favor.
Trustee Rowe.
In favor?
Trustee Christina.
In favor.
Trustee Danko.
Opposed.
Vice Chair Trites.
Opposed.
I'm in favor. Trustee Marai.
In favor.
Trustee Michael. Trustee Intomasi.
In favor.
Trustee Ingrid.
In favor.
Trustee Carabella.
Opposed.
Thank you. The motion has failed. I'd like to congratulate Trustee Intomasi on her phenomenal compassion and leadership and a beautiful tribute to Giacomo tonight. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is 8.2, Policy I-19, Occupational Health and Safety. Trustee Danko.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move the resolution resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board accept the recommendation of the Policy Committee and approve Policy I-19, Occupational Health and Safety as presented. Is there a seconder, please?
Any questions to that policy? No? All right. We're going to take the vote then. Trustee Quinn.
In favor.
Trustee Anna Maria.
In favor.
Trustee Rowe.
In favor?
Trustee Christina.
In favor.
Trustee Danko.
Favor?
Vice Chair Trites.
In favor.
Trustee Marai.
In favor.
Trustee Michael.
In favor.
Trustee Intomasi.
In favor.
Trustee Ingrid.
In favor.
Trustee Carabella.
In favor.
Thank you. One will be 8.3, Policy 3-05, Employee Assault. Can I have a seconder, please? I'm sorry, Trustee Danko, you need to speak to that.
Madam Chair, I'd like to move item 8.3, resolve that the Halton Catholic District School Board accept the recommendation of the Policy Committee and approve Policy 3-05, Employee Assault as presented. Is there a seconder, please?
Trustee Intomasi, seconder. Any questions to that motion? No? All right. We'll take the vote. Trustee Carabella.
In favor.
Trustee Ingrid.
In favor.
Trustee Intomasi.
In favor.
Trustee Michael.
In favor.
Trustee Marai.
In favor.
Vice Chair Trites.
In favor.
Trustee Danko.
In favor?
Trustee Christina.
In favor.
Trustee Rowe.
In favor?
Trustee Anna Maria.
In favor.
Trustee Quinn.
In favor.
Thank you. We'll now go to 8.4, Policy 3-06, Harassment. Trustee Danko.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move, resolve that the Halton Catholic District School Board accepts the recommendation of the Policy Committee and approve Policy 3-06, Harassment as presented. Is there a seconder?
Trustee Mariah seconding? Seconding? Is that a word? But you're going to be the seconder? Okay. All right. Any questions to that particular motion? No? All right. We'll take the vote. Trustee Anna Maria.
In favor.
Trustee Rowe.
In favor?
Trustee Christina.
In favor.
Trustee Danko.
Favor?
Vice Chair Trites.
In favor.
Trustee Marai. Trustee Michael. Trustee Intomasi.
In favor.
Trustee Ingrid.
In favor.
Trustee Carabella.
In favor.
Okay. That's okay. 8.5, Policy. Trustee Quinn, since I haven't finished my next item, are you in favor of that particular motion? No problem. Sorry? Yes, but that's okay. I just want to know, are you in favor? I'm sorry? Okay, thank you. Oh, I see. Okay, sorry, my apologies. 8.5, Policy 3-15, Workplace Violence. Trustee Danko.
Madam Chair, I'd like to move the following resolution, resolve that the Halton Catholic District School Board accept the recommendation of the policy committee and approve policies 3-15, workplace violence, as presented. Is there a seconder?
Thank you. A seconder, please. Trustee Ian Tomasi, any questions to that particular policy? Anyone? No? All right, so we'll take the vote, please. Trustee Quinn.
In favor.
Trustee Anna Maria.
In favor?
Trustee Rowe.
In favor?
Trustee Christina.
In favor.
Trustee Danko.
Favor?
Vice Chair Trites.
In favor.
Trustee Murray.
In favor.
Trustee Michael.
In favor.
Trustee Ian Tomasi.
In favor.
Trustee Ingrid.
In favor.
Trustee Carabella.
In favor.
Thank you. I think we're all done. All right, thank you. So we'll go to 8.7, which is the Oakville South Central Catholic Elementary Sorry, did I miss something? Yes, what did I miss? It's been a long... One more, okay. 8.6, Policy I-44, Strategic Planning Policy. Trustee Danko.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a new policy for the board. I-44 basically codifies a process, a strategic planning process that directors of education go through every cycle, every planning cycle. So the Education Act requires trustees, in conjunction with the Board of Trustees, with the Director of Education, to formulate a multi-year plan on a regular basis. So that legislation, this is the many boards have had policies in the past that put the planning process on paper. So this is a policy that the public can understand how the process works and that they can actually participate in the process. And what this, where we're at right now is putting this policy out for first reading to public consultation. So I move that resolve that the Halton Catholic District School Board accept the recommendation of the policy committee and approve policy I-44 strategic planning at first reading.
Seconder, please. Trustee Carabella, any questions to that? No? All right. Trustee Carabella, your vote, please.
In favor.
Thank you. Trustee Ingrid.
In favor.
Trustee Ian Tomasi.
In favor.
Trustee Michael.
In favor.
Trustee Murray. Vice Chair Trites.
In favor.
Trustee Danko.
Favor?
Trustee Christina.
In favor.
Trustee Rowe.
In favor?
Trustee Anna Maria.
In favor?
Trustee Quinn.
In favor.
Now we're going to 8.7, Oakville South Central Catholic Elementary School, approval to proceed with school capital planning and preliminary budget. Mr. Merrick? There you are. Yes, okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just quickly going over some of the comments from when we presented the staff report. So looking at the early budget for the Oakville South Central School, again, way too early. We don't have any any designs yet or any architects selected for this yet, but if we were to project what the budget would look like, we have it here. So just over $11 million is the total budget for the project. With it being a rebuild, we do need to demolish the existing building on the site to start with, and then we go into construction. So construction's about 80% of the total budget for the project. And then you see it listed out with professional fees, all the permitting, testing, inspections, contingency on those things, HST and furniture and equipment. So the bulk, the vast majority of the project expenses in construction, about 80%, about another 10% in professional fees, and then the rest, you see it fall in line there. Also looking at, we wanted to see a project comparison. So the board hasn't built a school of that size in quite some time, but we did build in the early 2010s St. Anne's and St. Mary's. While they are larger than the proposed Oakville South Central School, you're only looking at 3 or 4 classrooms in addition. So on a 2-story building, it's only about two classrooms of footprint. It's only about 1,500 square feet larger footprint of the building. So you can see how we were in the $144 to $158 per square foot range for those 2 schools. I compared with some neighboring boards as well. So I have 6 examples of schools that are in that kind of mid to low 500 range and pupil places with neighboring boards. I'll state that they do use a different method of construction than us. So they use, managing the construction project, so they use a stipulated lump sum, which the general contractor bids the full price. So they actually tender all the sub-trades. Our board, we have historically done construction management. So what we do have a general contractor on the project that manages all the sub-trades. We actually individually bid those. So we see all those prices. We then ensure that the general contractor is not marking up each of those individual bids. and we see a lot of efficiency in that, and we get a lot better pricing on it. And it also allows us to kind of handpick some different options. If we, if you want to go fluorescent versus LED lighting, we can bid both of them and then see how the bids come in and pick from there. So, those are dollar per square foot. The neighboring school boards had a much higher dollar per square foot than what we've seen historically in the past for our schools. With the Oakville South Central School, with the budget we have of just over $9.4 million for construction, and based on about a low 50,000 square foot gross floor area for the building, we'd have about $176 per square foot to spend on that. We would expect to get more savings on that, or lower dollar per square foot on that. But with that stated, we do think we have sufficient funds to complete the project. And then there's also some questions last time about the architect selection process, so I just wanted to be clear on how we select our architects. So we circulate an RFP through the board's pre-qualified architect list. We then do site walkthroughs with the interested architects so they know kind of what we're looking for in the new school design. The architects then, they go away, do their design proposals, submit those back to the board. Board staff evaluates the proposals then. So we have a very diverse team, so typically people from facilities, but also from business and from the academic side as well. Looking at the proposals that are submitted. So we evaluate them based on the competency of the architects and past projects, the design and the fee structure. The architects then make a presentation to the board staff, to the evaluation panel. It allows the board staff to ask questions and modify any scoring on that, and kind of clarify any points on the design. Then we select the architect, and then finally, if we have any slight changes we want to do to the design after that, we work on those with the architect. So that's the process for. Sorry. Yep.
How many, through you, Madam Chair, how many architecture firms are on that pre-approved list, and how often is the list updated?
We have 4 on the list, and it's usually every 5 years that we reevaluate the list. So.
Excellent. Go ahead, Ryan.
So with that, I have the resolutions there.
Any questions for Ryan, apart from the two we had? Trustee Carabella?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. On page 80 of the report, there's just the projected enrollment, and I'm just wondering what is the actual enrollment this year for St. Joseph's and St. James. Do you have the numbers for this year, as much as we have? So
Fred will look them up while we're talking. All right. Trustee Murray?
I just have one quick question. I get a question from a couple constituents about this on a regular basis on construction of schools. It's pretty specific, but thought I'd bring it up here. And that is, do we ever look into kind of solar panels when we come into the construction of our schools? And are there any subsidies that the provincial government provides when looking at that?
Typically, the subsidies that the province provides is on the energy you generate. So they'll pay you they agree to a certain rate to pay you for any energy you put back into the grid. With the funding envelope that we have for new schools, it's already very tight. So putting up some additional capital costs up front is typically very challenging. So we haven't done that a lot in the past. We do have some solar arrays that were partially funded through the ministry grants on other schools that we have. So.
Fred, did you get anything? Thank you very much. Okay, Trustee Carabella, do you have a question?
Well, just to follow up, I'd like to make that comment so that the predictions are, I think, significantly off, maybe not, but, St. James was, you said, predicted 201, and they have 208 students, so it actually went up. And also St. Joseph's was at 352 was predicted in this page that I have. You said a bit higher, and it's 375. So I'm just making the comment that a lot rides on these numbers, so I just wanted to know the actual numbers. And it actually could go up still before the end of October with more students registered.
All right, so are we ready for the vote? There are 4 motions. I'm going to take each one separately. They're all different motions. I'm going to read them, and then we're going to move or whatever. All right, so the first one, resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board authorize staff to proceed with the selection of an architect and the school capital planning process for the Oakville South Century Catholic Elementary School project in the town of Oakville, and we have a mover. Trustee Danko, seconded by Trustee Ian Tomasi. We'll have the vote. Are there any other questions pertaining to this? No? Okay. We'll have the vote. Trustee Quinn?
In favor.
Trustee Anne Maria?
In favor.
Trustee Rowe?
In favor.
Trustee Christina?
In favor.
Trustee Danko?
In favor.
Vice Chair Trites? Trustee Marai? Trustee Michael?
In favor.
Trustee Ian Tomasi?
In favor.
Trustee Ingrid?
In favor.
Trustee Carabella?
In favor.
Thank you. Over the page, the next one, could I have a mover, please? And no, I'd rather not, because they all have different amounts of money. Okay? It's just easier if we have to go back to one. We don't want to open them all.
Sure.
Trustee Marai, seconded by Trustee Michael. All right, I'll read it. Resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board approve the preliminary estimated project budget not to exceed $11,427,716 for the Oakville South Central Catholic Elementary School project in the town of Oakville. Okay, go ahead.
Through you, Madam Chair, what happens if the budget does exceed that amount? Will they come back to us for another vote?
Madam Chair. Yes, if we do go above what it has been allocated by the ministry, we would come to the board. It may require that we use additional proceeds of disposition, for example, if that would be the case. We don't expect that to be the case, however, that would be the process.
That's why we're doing it individually. Trustee Quinn?
In favor.
Trustee Anna Maria?
In favor.
Trustee Rowe?
In favor.
Trustee Christina?
In favor.
Trustee Danko?
In favor.
Vice Chair Trites?
In favor.
Trustee Marai? Trustee Michael? Trustee Ian Tomasi? Trustee Ingrid?
In favor.
Trustee Carabella?
In favor.
Thank you. The next one, a mover, please. Mover, Trustee Marai, seconded by Trustee Michael. Any questions to that one? Nope. Resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board approve the use of proceeds of disposition, POD, in the amount of $4,223,847 to partially fund the construction of the Oakville South Central Catholic Elementary School project in the town of Oakville. Trustee Carabella? Thank you. Trustee Ingrid?
In favor.
Trustee Ian Tomasi? Trustee Michael?
In favor.
Trustee Marai? Vice Chair Trites?
In favor.
Trustee Danko?
In favor.
Trustee Christina?
In favor.
Trustee Rowe?
In favor.
Trustee Anna Maria?
In favor.
Trustee Quinn?
In favor.
Thank you. Last one. Moved by, this is the borrowing bylaw. Moved by Trustee Ian Tomasi, seconded by Vice Chair Trites. Resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board approve borrowing bylaw number 2017F02 in the amount of $7,203,869 to finance the construction of the Oakville South Century Catholic Elementary School project in the town of Oakville. Any questions? Trustee Quinn?
Is this a new bylaw, or is it an updated of a previous?
Nagoy?
Every time we have the need to borrow money on a construction project, we have a capital loan, and we would ask the board for a capital bylaw. So it's each project would have their own. The amount is for the ministry funding only. The proceeds of disposition we have in the account,
And the 4 million, the balance is what we get paid from the ministry twice a year, but we do spend it ahead of time. So this just helps facilitate funding the project in the interim.
A follow-up, Madam Chair, if I may. And in making a bylaw now through this resolution, is that different than the way that we make other bylaws on the board, or is it specific rules for finance?
Roxanne?
It's a borrowing bylaw, so it's different than a board bylaw.
Trustee Carabella?
In favor.
Thank you. Trustee Ingrid?
In favor.
Trustee Intomasi? Trustee Michael?
In favor.
Trustee Murray?
In favor.
Vice Chair Trites? Trustee Danko?
Favor?
Trustee Christina?
In favor.
Trustee Rowe?
In favor?
Trustee Anna Maria?
In favor?
Trustee Quinn?
In favor.
That's done. Sorry? 8.8, St. Mark Catholic Elementary School, Childcare and OEYCFC approval to proceed with school capital planning and preliminary budget. Mr. Merrick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nothing special here, just I have the resolutions for you guys, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions for Ryan? None? Okay. Let me just get on that. What page is the resolution on for that one? 198 and 199. Yeah, resolutions. My sheets are mixed. 198. Just a minute. I don't know why this happens. Oh, yes. Okay. The resolution, a mover please and a seconder, page 198. Trustee Intomasi, seconded by Vice Chair Trites. Resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board authorize staff to proceed with the selection of an architect and the school planning process, school capital planning process for the St. Mark Catholic Elementary School. Any questions? Pardon? Go ahead.
Through you, Madam Chair, in the selection of architects for each individual school, are we putting these out to tender at the same time where there could be some cost savings, or are we putting them out individually for separate projects where architects could charge us their full price for both?
We're putting them out at the same time. However, there is a substantial amount of work that goes into each one of them. So while there may be cost savings from giving them both to the same company, the design work and the project management on site is not any different. There's not a lot of cost or economic. There's not a lot of savings in their time, and having one firm dedicated to each one also has its benefits as well. So having somebody with dedicated time to spend on each project.
Okay. Follow up?
Yes, please, Madam Chair. So was there a consideration of the potential cost savings of packaging them together or not? We considered that issuing at the same time, which we have done, but I do not think there would be any cost savings of having one person do both of them, because the amount of time to spend on each individual project would still be the same, whether it's one company or two. So, through you, Madam Chair, if one company is set to make twice as much money based on having one over two, could they not offer potentially savings to the board because they are offering, they are getting twice as much profit from one business unit?
Well, there may be opportunities to squeeze them on the profit margin there. I think we'd end up paying a lot of it back in change orders due to lack of prep time and design time and forethinking on the project, because both of these schools have very tight timelines to construct in, and we having two separate firms work on it is beneficial to the board to have people with dedicated resources on each project. That's not to say that a single firm may not win it, but or may not win both, but we evaluate each of the designs and their fee structures as the RFPs come in.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Can you give me a ballpark of what the last school we built, the architectural fees were?
Yeah, so for Milton number 8, we were in about 8% was the design fee for it. So which included project management and the design fee. Based on I think it's 13.7 million total, so it'd be around $1 million. So.
All right, Trustee Quinn, voting.
In favor.
Thank you. Trustee Anna Maria.
In favor.
Trustee Rowe.
In favor.
Trustee Christina.
In favor.
Trustee Danko.
Favor.
Vice Chair Trites. Trustee Murray.
In favor.
Trustee Michael.
In favor.
Trustee Intomasi.
Favor.
Trustee Ingrid.
In favor.
Trustee Carabella.
In favor.
Thank you. The next resolution concerns money. So a mover, please. I don't think we have a mover for the next one. Trustee Murray, seconded by Trustee Danko. Resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board approves the preliminary estimated budget not to exceed $3,667,880 for the St. Mark Catholic Elementary School right-sizing project in the city of Burlington. Any questions? No? Okay. Trustee Carabella?
In favor.
Thank you. Trustee Ingrid?
In favor.
Trustee Intomasi?
In favor.
Trustee Michael?
In favor.
Trustee Murray?
In favor.
Vice Chair Trites? Trustee Danko?
In favor.
Trustee Christina?
In favor.
Trustee Rowe?
In favor.
Trustee Anna Maria?
In favor.
Trustee Quinn?
In favor.
Thank you. The next one is the borrowing bylaw, moved by, can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Trustee Rowe, Trustee Intomasi. Resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board approve borrowing bylaw number 2017F03 in the amount of $1,610,867 to finance the St. Mark Catholic Elementary School right-sizing project in the city of Burlington. Any questions pertaining to that, Trustee Quinn?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the Treasurer, why do we need two different bylaws for this borrowing? Remind me, please.
In this case, we do have two separate funding. One is from the ministry and one is for the child care. And the child care on its own requires a different bylaw and accumulates its own interest within the amount of money that has been approved for the project. Whereas for the ministry's funding, we have GSN that is generated for interest, capitalized interest. So we do actually get additional funding above and beyond the amount that has been approved by the ministry, and you'll see once the budget gets presented to you, below the subtotal will equal to the amount of funding we did receive, and underneath will be bridge financing. That will be additional GSN. So the total project cost with interest, capitalized interest, will be higher, but for child care, it's all encompassing, and it has to be on its own borrowing bylaw as well.
Through you, Madam Chair, then, could we add some language that indicates that this resolution is for the funding of the Early Years and Child Family Center project? And
We're on the second one? Third one.
That's why
That
I
is
asked
the
about
20F03?
The third one's for the school, and the fourth one's for the child care portion.
We're on F03, the 1.6 million. Am I correct?
Okay, thank you. I'll withdraw the question. Thank you.
Are we on F04? No. Oh, F03. We're on F03. Okay, so we're going to vote on F03, then we'll go to F04? Am I correct there? Yeah, okay. All right, so are there any further questions on F03? All right, vote please. I think I've got a mover and a seconder. Trustee Carabella?
In favor.
Thank you. Trustee Ingrid?
In favor.
Trustee Intomasi?
In favor.
Trustee Michael?
In favor.
Trustee Murray?
In favor.
Vice Chair Trites? Trustee Danko?
In favor.
Trustee Christina?
In favor.
Trustee Rowe?
In favor.
Trustee Anna Maria?
In favor.
Trustee Quinn?
In favor.
Thank you. The last resolution pertaining to the Child Care Center and the Early Years Child and Family Center. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Trustee Murray, seconded by Vice Chair Trites. I'll read it. Resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board approve borrowing bylaw number 2017F04 in the amount of $2,057,013 to finance the St. Mark Catholic Elementary School Child Care Center and Ontario Early Years Child and Family Center, OEY CFC project in the city of Burlington. Any questions? Mover and a seconder, so we'll take a vote. Trustee Carabella?
In favor.
Trustee Ingrid?
In favor.
Trustee Intomasi?
In favor.
Trustee Michael?
In favor.
Trustee Marai?
In favor.
Vice Chair Trites? Trustee Danko?
Favor?
Trustee Christina?
In favor.
Trustee Rowe?
In favor?
Trustee Anna Maria?
In favor.
Trustee Quinn?
Opposed?
Opposed? Okay, thank you. All right, so now we are on staff reports, unless someone tells me otherwise. We are? Yes. So it is again Superintendent Cipriano, Superintendent Nagoy, Mr. Merrick, 9.1, Milton number 8, Ford Catholic Elementary School, boundary review.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I present the staff report regarding the Milton number 8 Ford Catholic Elementary School boundary review. Just to remind you all that on November 21st, 2016, the board received correspondence from the Ministry of Education indicating that the business case submitted for Milton number 8 had been approved. Staff is hopeful and expects the new school to be ready for students by September 2018, and as such, school boundaries will need to be established. Appendix B, the map outlines the proposed school boundary that was used to develop the school projections for the business case that was submitted and approved by the Ministry. The proposed boundary review will follow the minor school boundary review process, as outlined in our Administrative Procedure VI 88 school boundary review process. We are able to use this process, the minor school boundary review process, because we meet 3 of the 6 criteria under our procedure. One being that the boundary review only involves one school, St. Benedict. Number 2, the need for this boundary review is the result in opening a new school. And finally, the holding area was previously identified to the school community and now is being directed to its designated school. And we did this in March 2017. This holding area was identified in our 2017 annual facility accommodation report. The Advisory School Boundary Review Committee composition will include reps from the St. Benedict School community, parent community, but particularly from the Boyne community, as this is the group that's going to be expected to be most impacted. As part of the staff report, you also have before you the list of project milestones being proposed, and the next step will be an action report of the same that I will present to you at our next board meeting on October the 3rd. I, Fred, or Ryan be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions from the trustees pertaining to that? No? Nothing else to be said on that? All right. Thank you, Mr. Superintendent Cipriano. We'll look forward to seeing that at the next meeting. I guess it is the next meeting, yeah, October. All right. Information items. 10.1, Student Trustee Update, Trustee Anna Maria.
Thank you. I want to start off with what Mr. Benda mentioned, which was I had the privilege of attending the OCSA meeting today, and it was very insightful being able to sit in and kind of seeing it from a student's perspective. Moving on, we had our first Senate meeting last Tuesday. So that was the first meeting of the year, which we congratulated the senators again for being chosen. We welcomed them, we briefed them on what we're doing this following year. So the 3 major things we discussed was the anti-bullying launch, see the problem be the solution, which will happen later in October. We also spoke about the International Student Initiative that happened over the summer, as well as a new initiative that Ingrid, Christina, and I proposed, which was holding a sort of charity fundraising event during Catholic Education Week, which is specific to each school, so a school-based initiative. Tying into that, right before this meeting, Christina, Ingrid, and I had the chance to meet with the Halton Catholic Children's Education Foundation and speak about how they can play a role in that. That's all.
Thank you. Yes, Trustee Michael.
Just a question to you, Madam
Yes.
Chair, to Anna Maria. Do universities have senators as well?
I can direct you to Christina.
I don't believe that universities do. It's just within the board that senators are elected. I'm not sure, maybe for particular universities, if they choose to elect a senate to make decisions on behalf of the university. But in terms of our board and what I know, that it's only for school boards and secondary students.
follow up on that. Yeah, I know I have several friends that are involved in student associations at university levels, but they're not as general as Senate is. So Senate's kind of, we deal with students throughout our board. Students associations, from the ones that I know from my friends, deal with specific issues. So there's like a health science student association and so forth, which I can as closely as possible tie to the Senate at our board.
Thank you. Any other questions for the student trustees? No? Okay. Thank you very much, ladies. Appreciate that as always. 10.2, school educational field trips, Superintendent McGillicuddy.
Through you, Madam Chair, presented for information are the approved school educational trips, and I'll take any questions at this time. Thank you.
Any questions on the school educational trips? I think $600 for 3 days in Ottawa is expensive. Any other questions? Any other comments? Trustee Carabella?
Thank you. I'm just wondering, the school trip, that's the pilgrimage to, is it the chaplain that is on that trip that's the leader?
It's usually a teacher that's the leader. Can somebody answer that question, please, with regard to the pilgrimage?
I would have to defer that question to my colleague who's the superintendent of Loyola, since they would be the one who approved it.
Okay, Superintendent for Loyola, you're on.
Through you, Madam Chair, I will have to clarify. It would be more than one staff member going. I would assume the chaplain would be one of the staff members, but certainly there would probably be more than one going. So I can get back to you. I don't know specifically who it is.
Superintendent Nair?
I just wanted to share that this is a new initiative that our chaplains are putting together. So chaplains will be on the trip, but I'm assuming each school will have teachers. I've yet to get the ones for my particular school in, but we can certainly address that with them. But it is a new initiative among the chaplains.
Good to include them. Thank you. Anything else on the educational field trips? No? Okay. Strategic plan 2016 to 2021, update on the Director's report to trustees. Madam Director.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, I'm very pleased to present to trustees this update on monitoring the results of our Year 1 implementation of the Board's multi-year plan. Last year, as you know, in September we launched the multi-year strategic plan, the title Focus on Our Students, 2016 to 2021. And to assess our progress on the Year 1 of our multi-year plan, our Research and Development Services conducted a monitoring activity at the end of the school year to collect perceptual data from stakeholders, namely parents, teachers, educational assistants, students, administrators, support staff, curriculum and special ed staff, corporate staff, pastors, and parish representatives. And this report contains results from our monitoring activity, commenting on how well they thought we did in meeting, with respect to meeting our strategic goals, and the areas where they thought we needed improvement. The goals within each pillar and their accompanying actions were also monitored at the end of Year 1, and these successes are highlighted in Appendix A. So when we looked at monitoring activity number 1, we had focus groups involving 932 stakeholders, very one-on-one consultation with face-to-face. Feedback was gathered in two ways. So there was a focus group, and there was focus groups and online surveys. These focus groups were held in May and in July, and invitation to provide feedback was emailed to all parents and staff with a link to our online survey. There were questions asked, and in each method were identical, so the responses were combined, and the total number of responses in the analysis was 766. An interesting tool that our research department has employed is an interactive summary, and if you're online, you can click the link to that summary, and you can pick and see what all the comments were in each of the areas. So when we looked at achieving under meeting the needs of all students, of all learners, we asked our focus group and online participants what they thought went particularly well in Year 1, and they identified using multiple strategies for differentiated learning and having highly skilled teachers. Some areas where we required some improvement is providing teachers with more opportunities so that they can improve their teaching strategies for the range of learners. And some quotes there, if you're online, you can look at the survey, the interactive tool, how to accommodate, how to modify for students with special needs. There's a range of suggestions there. Under the believing pillar, what went particularly well was we provide a Catholic learning environment. And what needs improvement were understanding the school experience from the perspective of the non-Catholic students. So how are we engaging students who may not be of our faith and have them participate and be included in our religious and faith activities? And also another area of improvement was a closer integration of Catholic faith and school activities. So making explicit connections to our faith in everything that we do, from sports to anything that we do in school, and also aligning that with the Catholic graduate expectations. Under the pillar of belonging, what went particularly well was we have a diverse range of programs and events that happen, and what needs improvement is we need to address safety concerns. And people mentioned school security, school access, the whole lockdown, making sure that everybody feels safe there and that all students feel welcome, safe, and included. They mentioned continuing on with the bullying prevention program as a way to enhance that. Under foundational elements and optimizing our effectiveness, what went particularly well was that there was frequent communication and we were organized in our planning, and certain technologies assisted us in work, but where we needed to improve was more about communication, in particular school to home, so that parents could expect consistency in the way the communication came, communication from board to schools, and communication between departments here at the CEC. So that involved monitoring activity number one. The second part of our monitoring activity, we surveyed all of our departments and asked them to provide details about all their efforts and the actions that were aligned to the strategic plan. And the successes from 2016 are summarized in Appendix A. This is a really good look for trustees, so you could see exactly what transpired last year. It's like a little historical notebook, if you like to refer to what's happened in the past year. We've made progress towards fulfilling our goals outlined with our strategic plan, and senior staff are currently refining our priorities for this year, and we will incorporate all the areas identified for improvement through our monitoring activities so that will guide our work in fulfilling the strategic goals and objectives. And we will be looking at aligning that with our board improvement plan and all of the department's plans. Happy to take questions, Madam
Thank
Chair.
you, Madam Director. Any questions for the Director? Trustee Carabella?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. So I know last year we spoke about respecting and promoting life, and I'm wondering which section that would have been in. And because there were some significant events.
That would probably be under believing. I'm trying to think if we included that one in there. You're talking about the Civies Day for Life, and there's...
Superintendent Noah?
So under believing, the third main goal is staff and students are discerning believers formed in the Catholic faith community who model Christ in their actions. And you can see in there we have the People of Life retreat, and then of course we'll be adding in as we continue to develop our system goals around our culture of life. You'll see that at our meeting in a couple of weeks. So
thank you. All right. Trustee Quinn?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. What other more concrete methods of evaluating the success of the strategic plan do we have at our disposal than focus groups and other less concrete means? Do we look at standardized tests? Do we look at the marks in the religious education programs? Do we have more concrete monitoring than talking to 900 people?
Yes, I will start it off, and then our chief research officer can add. We use obviously our school climate survey. We use our My Blueprint data. We use EQAO. I'm happy to pass it over to Lisa. We have early developmental instruments that we are using to help us with this. So Lisa, could you add? Thanks.
Through you, Madam Chair. So as a first step for any new plan, the first step is always just to assess how our progress is going towards achieving our goal. So after year one, we're really just looking to see across the board our successes and our where we need to improve. Moving forward, as we have standardized instruments in place, those will be included in the report.
Trustee Quinn?
Then perhaps through you, Madam Chair, we could see the baseline from which we're starting on all those monitoring activities so that we know where we are now, and then when we get into years 2, 3 of the plan, we see how the progress is going concretely.
Thank you. Any other questions for the Director? No? Okay, thank you very much. Moving on, 10.4, long-term facility renewal strategy. Mr. Merrick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So it is a meaty subject, but I'll try and keep it as brief as I can here. Presenting the long-term renewal strategy for the board. In a world of limited financial resources, it's very important that we practice good financial stewardship and spend each dollar like it's our own. So we need a good plan on how we're going to spend our capital allocation, and this particularly pertains to renewal work. So this particular plan does a 5-year outlook on renewal across the board. Halton Catholic, as we heard some comments earlier on, is considered a leader in facility condition across the province, and that's exactly where we want to stay going forward. So when we talk about our sector-leading facilities, looking at things like equitable learning environments for students, so we can increase student enrollment and then attract and retain talented staff. And of course, we also want to avoid costly emergency repairs. Very expensive to do emergency repairs, so we want to be proactive in addressing any issues that pertain to facility concerns or equipment issues. Of course, we all know that pipes never break on day shift. They always break on evenings and weekends, so much more expensive to repair. So looking at the history of school renewal at Halton Catholic, a lot of work was completed back in the mid to early 90s around school renewal, and some building additions were completed in that time. At the same time, we saw rapid growth, so it shows you kind of the trajectory of new school builds in Halton. So a lot of renovations done in the mid-90s, and continued new builds proceeding from the 90s onto today. So by the late 1990s, a lot of our schools were in like new condition, which was great for our students and staff. However, that means we have a lot of buildings now that are coming up to around 20, 25 years of age and requiring renewal work. So when we talk about school renewal, we're talking about 3 major components. The first being critical building components, mechanical, electrical, so HVAC, heating, cooling, plumbing, lighting, roofing, and accessibility issues. This first bucket, well, they're not the really showy items. They are very expensive and very critical to operating the building and maintaining good environments for our students and staff. The second bucket is around programming and pedagogy. So program-specific areas, things like food and nutrition rooms, natural play spaces, teacher workrooms, resource rooms, artificial turf fields fall into that programming area, and learning commons as well. And then lastly, aesthetics, things that are much more showy, not always as expensive as the prior 2 sections, but flooring, lockers, acoustic ceiling tiles, washrooms, and painting. So these are kind of the 3 buckets that we're considering when we're constructing our school renewal or our long-term facility renewal plan. And looking at our backlog, where we've been at in the past, so we have roughly $750 million, so $750 million in facility assets. With that, the ministry we do ministry facility assessments every 5 years. They inspect all of our schools, and all of ours have now been done within the past 2 years. So they do half of our schools in a school year, but all of ours have now been done between 2015 and 2016. So they assess us with about $80 million in renewal needs in the next 5 years. So in that $80 million, they don't consider any programming improvements, so things like artificial turf or adding natural play spaces is not something that they consider as a renewal requirement for a building, that we would consider something that our facility should have. However, they do consider a lot of, I would call them maintenance or small operational work to newer facilities, so facilities that are kind of in the 5 to 15 year of age range, where yes, they probably could use some work, but it wouldn't be prudent to replace those items at this time. So directionally, the $80 million is I would say, is correct, but we can argue with the ministry on what exact items fall into that bucket. But that puts our total facility condition index, or FCI, at 10.5%, which is 5th among the 72 boards in the province. And a lot of the boards, all of the boards that are ahead of us are substantially smaller than us, and they typically have some pockets of high growth. So they're building new facilities, and when you have, say 10 schools in your board and 5 of them are brand new, it's really easy to be good at in your facility condition index because you have a very young fleet of facilities. So in our renewal strategy, we have to incorporate both the facility improvements, so the big critical building components, as well as the programming improvements. And we have several funding streams that we can use to renew our facilities. I'll walk through them briefly, but first we have the capital reserve. So this is typically comprised of cost recovery fees that we collect from our community use activities. We typically use these funds to renew our common areas, so artificial turf, gym flooring, auditoriums, kind of the common spaces where the community use activities take place, and they wear down our facilities, so we use the money to refurbish and renew those areas. School renewal funding, this is an annual allocation from the ministry. It's based on our enrollment, so we get based on our provincial percentage of enrollment, they give us a cut of the total provincial funding for school renewal. This one has some strings tied to it, though. We have to spend at least 60% on capital improvements, so those critical building components, while the balance can be spent on operating and maintenance expenditures. Third, we move into school conditioning improvement. This is a program started back in 2011-2012 school year, and it's continued on since then. However, the ministry is only committed to running it, so it's for this current school year and for next school year. After that, there's no guarantees about it continuing on. And for this particular bucket of funds, at least 70% has to be spent on those critical building components, and the remaining 30% can be spent on other operating and maintenance expenditures. Fourth, we have the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. This is tied to the province's Climate Action Plan. So it's the proceeds from the cap and trade auctions that take place for the large carbon emitters. And the intent is that we reinvest these funds into energy efficiency projects within the education sector. And these ones here, so last year it was announced in April after the first cap and trade auction, and we had to have this fund spent by the end of the province's fiscal year, which would be March 31st of 2018. So very limited timeline. The funds evaporate on April 1st, 2018, so we need to make sure we spend them before they go away.
How much money has our board seen from this, and how much have we spent?
So the funds that were announced last April, we get a little under $1 million for the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. The very big time constraints around that, because we need to have it spent within the fiscal year. The only time you can do, a large project to spend $1 million, so LED lighting or HVAC projects would be kind of things that we could do to increase our energy efficiency. You basically need to have those projects on the go before you can spend that money. Lucky for us, we did have a lot of those projects already on the go last year. So we did a lot of work over the summer. We did LED retrofitting. We had 9 schools that we did major work on. A lot of heat pump replacements, a lot of LED lighting retrofits, so we can use those funds to offset our own capital reserves. Yes.
Okay, trustee Quinn, then trustee Danko.
And to follow up on trustee Marai's earlier question, could that money be spent on solar panels for schools?
I have to look at the list. There is a list of projects that are approved. Maybe we can put that on the follow-up list, and I can get back to you on that.
Trustee Danko?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I find it amusing that the greenhouse gas reduction funds dissipate on April 1st.
Thank you. Do you want to say anything to that? No.
I'll pass on that.
Okay, all right, thank you. Please continue, Ryan.
Then the last bucket of funds we have is the proceeds of disposition. So obviously generated from the sale of surplus property. We know that the board does have some surplus property, where property matters are in-camera issues, which is precisely why we don't have a lot of numbers in this report. But we will talk about directionally how the funding balance of the incoming available capital sources that we have versus the project expenses that we anticipate from this plan later on in the deck.
Trustee Quinn has a question, right?
Through you to the treasurer, could we have an idea of how much money we have in the proceeds of disposition now, not including projects that may be under our in-camera meeting, and compare that to what our current backlog is for the work that was on 3 or 4 slides earlier?
The current balance for the proceeds of disposition is around 7.8 million currently. Now, keep in mind this is about a 15-year plan, and it's contingent on additional funding if it does get approved and obtained. So it would change, the course would change throughout the 15 years to accommodate the funding that is available at that time.
Agreed. All of these programs that are listed here are still active, so we do see more funds, and we project more funds to come in through those throughout the 5-year life of the long-term facility renewal strategy. So, looking at what renewal work is required, we'll start with, we have 32 buildings or facilities across the board that are built pre-1997, so 20 years of age or older. I'll try and work through this slowly here. It is a long list, and I know it's hard to see on there, but so out of those 32 buildings, we have 12 facilities that were renewed since 2012, either having additions or we've done renewal work that we've approved to the board. So these are large-scale renewals, so typically involving roofing, HVAC, school refresh, LED lighting, and the natural playgrounds as well. So 12 of them, of the 32, have already been touched since 2012. We have 5 of the schools on the list that are involved in consolidation projects. So Holy Family, St. John's Oakville, and St. James are all slated for closure. Of course, St. James is slated for repurposing into the Adult Learning Center down the road. But those schools are on the list as our 20-plus-year-old buildings, but not slated for renewal because we have them on the slate to close. Further, 2 of those that were involved in consolidation projects or right-sizing projects, we have the St. Joseph's Oakville or Oakville South Central rebuild project. So that's been funded for a new building, so we don't need to renew the building because we're going to be building a new facility there. That's fully ministry funded. As well as the St. Mark right-sizing project, so the addition at St. Mark's. As we complete the addition there, we would intend to renew the rest of the facilities to kind of match the new addition on the St. Mark's site. So continuing on, we have another 4 sites, or 4 buildings that are greater than 20 years old that are involved in current capital priority submissions. I'm going to talk to these a little bit later on, but with these projects we're hopeful of getting ministry funding on them, so not included in the renewal plan at current because we expect to get ministry funding to help us revitalize those facilities. And that leaves us with 10 schools and our 1 administration building as the problem to solve for. So I'll get into that on the subsequent slides here. So looking at the first 3 years of the window, of the 5-year window, we focus on renewal of the older facilities. So we can break it up into sections and different areas of the board. So firstly, looking at our schools in North Burlington, our elementary schools there. So we have St. Gabriel's and Canadian Martyrs. Both of those schools are in need of new roofs. which we completed over one summer. And then the following year, we would continue on with the interior renovations. So kind of securing the building envelope first before moving inside to do some refresh work on the mechanical systems as well as the aesthetics of the building on the inside. Moving on to South Burlington Elementary Schools, so St. Paul's, St. Raphael's, Ascension, St. Patrick's. We know these were all involved in a pupil accommodation review back in 2016, but no closures were recommended. These are all smaller schools, so in total less work to be completed, but we do need to do repairs if we're going to keep them as part of our fleet. We have included for them as renewal projects within the first 3 years of our renewal strategy. Some of them will be structurally challenging given the condition of the buildings. I'm thinking particularly St. Raphael's, which is a wooden structure building. So we are a little bit limited on what we can do to that building, but they are in need of some love and some renewal and refresh work. Moving on to the Burlington Secondary Schools, so Corpus Christi, 2009 build is in very good shape, so we don't have to worry about that one. But Assumption and Notre Dame, both in need of some renewal work. And they're much larger projects than the rest on this slide, so I'm going to talk about those a little bit later on a separate slide. So we'll get back to those two. St. Joe's Acton, again, a relatively small school, a smaller school, but it is in need of renewal work and kind of refresh work. So we have it on the docket for the next 3 years. Our Lady of Victory is, by far the smallest school in Milton. We've had discussions about the future of it and how we're going to utilize that school in the future. But ultimately, right now, with the accommodation pressures that we have in Milton, we need every desk we can get in Milton. So, we need it as a school, and if we're going to keep it as part of our fleet in Milton, we need to do some renewal work to it as well. So, we have that in the plan. I believe it's in the 2020 year for some renewal work there. And then our Catholic Education Center, so our lovely board office. There's no solution proposed within the plan right now. We do need to start having the discussion around what we're going to do with the board office. We do have a lot of space issues, so space constraint issues. A large portion of the building is temporary. It was erected or dropped in place back in 2007, so it's 10 years old. We know from working with the St. Mark's Porta-Pack, these things have finite lifespans, typically in the kind of the 15 to 20 year range. So we need to find a solution for our board office down the road. We also have a lot of accessibility concerns with the board, so we have a second floor, or second and a third floor in 802 Drury that don't have elevator access to them. So a lot of challenges with our existing building. So we do need to start having the discussion about how we're going to resolve that issue. I'll also say that of the funding streams that we showed on a few slides previous, none of those are usable for administrative buildings, so we can't utilize any of those funds for administrative buildings. There is a caveat that the greenhouse gas reduction funds could be used towards an administrative building. However, it can only be used if it's improving the energy efficiency of an existing administrative building. So there's some strings tied to that one. So that's all I'll say about the board office. And then finally we have, so those are, the first kind of chunk there shows our 10 schools and one administrative facility that we still have to touch in the first 3 years of the renewal strategy. We also have 4 capital priority requests. So at our last board meeting, we approved our capital priorities request for the ministry for 2017. So we have 4 of them that are 20 years of age or older. So it would be additions to Bishop Redding and St. Michael's. So the intent would be that if we get funding from the ministry to do the additions, we would do renewal to the remainder of the facility to make it, match kind of the mechanical systems and the decor and systems match throughout the building. We also have rebuild projects, so Holy Cross and St. Dominic's rebuilds. So we have not accounted for renewal work within the renewal strategy on those 2 facilities because we're still hopeful that we're going to get full funding from the ministry. However, we do have sufficient contingency within the renewal plan. If we need to either do renewal work to those schools or to contribute partial funding to a rebuild of that school, we do have funds within our contingency of the renewal strategy to kind of prop those projects up and kind of make it more enticing for the ministry to see if we can get a new build in those areas. And then lastly, we have the board-wide program. So These are kind of ones that span all of our schools, including our newer builds as well, so things that you've seen us do throughout the years. So natural playgrounds for kindergarten spaces. We have about 2/3 of our schools complete now. We'll continue that on in the future and finish off the rest of our schools. Artificial turf is, at our secondary schools, artificial turf sports fields. Very costly upfront. Once you have them in, it's very low maintenance, but they do need to be replaced. The carpet needs to be replaced at some point. So we're projected that kind of in 2019, 2020, we'll start needing to replace artificial turf fields at a rate of about 1 per year, and we have 9 secondary schools, so 9 years in a row. So there's a substantial cost that we'll see coming on each year, replacing 1 per year for 9 consecutive years. And then lastly, accessibility. So we have the Accessibility Act for Ontarians with a 2025 deadline for implementing various improvements throughout the provincial buildings. Again, a substantial cost that would surround that as well.
Through you, Madam Chair, are there any associated funding dollars coming from the province for our AODA requirements?
There is not anything explicitly directed at that right now. So I would say with our facilities being in the condition they are, we're in a much better spot than other boards as far as maintaining our facility conditions and having funds to reinvest into our facilities, including accessibility. However, if the province expects every building in the province to match the AODA 2025, there has to be funding coming forward to support that. So while we do want to meet the needs of our staff and students and try and invest in accessibility measures where it makes sense for us, we definitely don't want to be spending all of our resources on doing that with the thought that there should be money coming down the road to support those initiatives. And we've also considered for an emergency reserve, so we don't want to totally deplete our resources. We know that emergencies do happen on occasion, so we have a contingency amount left in the plan, just in case an emergency happens. So moving on to years 4 and 5 of the plan, so you're looking at 2021 and 2022 now. We shift our focus over to newer facilities. So looking at we have 9 schools that were built between 99 and 2002. 4 of those schools that were built in 99, they've all had renewal work done in the past 2 years. So Holy Rosary and Milton had the addition and some refresh work done to the rest of the school. Then our 3 clones that were built in 99 as well were all refreshed this past summer. However, the roofing systems were still in good enough shape where we didn't have to replace any of them at the current time. But by 2021, they'll be in need of some work on the roofing system. So we have the roofing replacement in plan for those schools. And then finally getting onto our 2001, 2002 builds. They'll be 20 years old by the time we hit 2022 and requiring some renewal work. So we move on to those schools that were built in 01 and 02. So moving on to our timeline, it's kind of a comprehensive look at it. It is fairly simplistic. We're not locking down exact dates at this point. It is still a strategic plan, a kind of a guiding document as to how we'll proceed with our school renewals. So you can kind of take if you follow the lines down, as the bar crosses it, we see that's construction season. So summer of 2018, summer of 2019, summer of 2020 being the time that we would get to refreshing those buildings. And I fully expect that this plan will adapt and change. So as projects are approved, as funding is realized, as new funding is allocated, the plan will shift and adapt. But the intent is we bring it back to the board to show you how things are changing and conditions are changing and how we're updating the plan each year. So the intent is it to be used as a guideline, not as a verbatim document that we use going forward, but as a guideline that we adapt as conditions change. So with the conservative assumptions that we made regarding funding coming in, including proceeds of disposition that we foresee down the road, as well as continuation of ministry programs that we already see, we do expect that the board will have sufficient funds to complete all the projects that you see on the list above there. They are still conceptual in nature right now, so we forecasted how much revenue we expect to see for capital allocations. We forecast the project expenses, and then we foresee that we will have enough funds to complete all the projects. And you'll note that some of those projects on there do span multiple years. There is, definitely every project on that list is not created equal. Some of them are much bigger than others. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the bigger ones on there right now. So kind of the two that we touched on earlier, the Burlington secondary schools, two of the larger projects. I mean, secondary schools are obviously just inherently bigger than elementary schools and inherently a lot more work. So looking at Notre Dame renewal project, the school was opened in 1989. The roofing systems were already replaced in 2010, so they're still in good shape. However, we do need significant work to the HVAC systems. It's a heat pump school. We have 95 heat pumps right there. So a lot of work, a lot of piping throughout the school. We actually replaced some of the piping just this past summer that was required, but we have a lot more work to do at Notre Dame. The school would also benefit from a lighting upgrade and a refresh of program spaces. We know that with the childcare spaces being created at St. Mark's, we'll be moving the childcare provider from Notre Dame over to St. Mark's. So we'll have some childcare space at Notre Dame that we can refurbish and make part of the school. So we'll have to consider how we're going to complete that work. However, we do expect that the majority of the work can be completed over the summer. So it will not impede with school operations during the year. So we'll basically open up the school, or open up the walls and the ceilings for the summertime, do the work, button it back up for September, and then revisit it again the next year. The idea is we start with mechanical systems and lighting before we move to kind of the cosmetic things. But it would take roughly 3 summers to have a complete refresh on Notre Dame. And then moving to Assumption. So Assumption opened 9 years prior to Notre Dame. However, it needs substantially more work than Notre Dame to improve the form and function of the building. So to make it look and feel like the rest of our secondary schools, it needs a lot more work. So we expect that the construction, we've done some preliminary conceptual designs on things that we would need to do to the building to make it kind of match our recent vintages of secondary schools. We're looking at least 3 years of construction. With it being an older facility, when you open up walls and open up ceilings, you never quite know exactly what you're going to find. So I'm saying at least 3 years, and it would have significant impact to operations. So we're talking about construction going on while the school's in progress. So there's really no way to do the major changes we need to do to that school. There's no way to only confine that work towards the summertime. If we, I will say that our conceptual designs that we have right now, we would need to add some floor area to the building. That would require ministry approval to add any floor area to the building, so we do need their blessing in order to proceed. And there's a big list. You have the list on the slides there of the changes that we would foresee happening to the Assumption school facility. However, it would have a new look and feel. It would not feel like a renovated or painted old school. It would look and feel like a different building. So these are substantial changes. With that comes substantial cost, but if we want to have it kind of match the rest of our secondary school fleet, these are the kind of changes we need to look at for Assumption. So moving on, we also have a few other new builds that are going to be, we expect to take place throughout the board over the next 5 years. So 13 in total, 3 of them are already approved, and 2 of them were on the agenda for tonight. So 3 new builds currently on the go right now. We have 9 others that were submitted to the ministry, are in various states of pending approval with the ministry. So we foresee those taking place over the next 5 years as well. And then one kind of future request from the ministry, Milton number 9, which you see down the road. However, we only have 1 facilities department and 1 construction manager, so consideration was given when building this plan that we need to balance new construction with the renewal needs as well, because it is one team that we're looking after all of those projects. So just in summary, the long-term facility renewal strategy looks to renew all pre-2003 facilities by 2022, including Holy Cross and St. Dominic. While we are still hopeful of the rebuild for those 2 facilities, we do have kind of an allocation or an earmark of funds in there, or a contingency of funds in there should we need to do a renewal or contribute partial funding to a municipally partially funded rebuild of those facilities. We don't have the Catholic Education Center included in the plan right now. However, we need to have that conversation about where we go with the future board office down the road. We have assumed capital funding sources, and it is reliant on sales of surplus property that we foresee down the road. As funding sources change down the road, we may have to look at revising the plan as we realize those or they're denied or go a different direction. We have incorporated significant renovations at assumption within the plan, so we do have the funds, or we foresee the funds coming in within the 5-year window to fund those major renovations at assumption. And of course, it does coincide with the long-term capital plan, so balancing new construction and renewal work. And like I said, as new projects and funding are realized, we will update the plan and report back to the board. So kind of next steps are where we're at right now. My team's working on facility inspections for the current year projects, so things that we foresee for summer of 2018, as well as the new construction projects that we foresee for summer of 2018. Working on inspections of those designs and specification prep, so we can do the tendering and bring subsequent reports back to the board for funding approval on those. So we foresee reports starting to come to the board, likely fall of 2017, and then into the early 2018 for the projects that we expect to complete in the summer of 2018. And like I said, staff will update the long-term facility renewal strategy as on a go-forward basis as projects are realized. So I would be happy to take any questions you might have on that.
Trustee Ian Tomasi.
Through you, Madam Chair, I just wanted to say thank you to staff. This is pretty comprehensive. It's very ambitious. I'm really happy about Assumption. It's been a long time coming, so I'm hoping that it can see some completion. Like you say, I don't know what's going to happen when you open up the walls there. I'd be interested to see how the details are going to flush out, but I'm sure that the community there will be most appreciative and very thankful, because some of them have been waiting and had students in there for at least 10 years. Large families. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Danko?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Speaking of assumptions, this deck assumes that the province will continue to fund us in the same manner they have as we look at the debt problems that the province faces and perhaps potential for a different government in the future. What were you thinking by way of a reserve fund, and what are you considering by way of risks of not having the funding continue as it has been for the last many years?
So we have allocated for a reserve fund in there. I think a healthy reserve is good for a board in case emergencies do happen. However, we don't want to be sitting on a large pile of cash as well, so we want to be reinvesting those funds into our facilities so that staff and students can utilize those state-of-the-art facilities. So we have allocated in there a reserve in the plans. We definitely have considered the fact that some of the funding streams may not continue, especially considering school conditioning improvement and programs that are the ministry, definitely advises us every year that it is a limited program and they only commit to usually 1 or 2 years at a time. So we haven't assumed anything beyond those, what they've already committed to within our assumptions. So we have taken kind of conservative approaches where if we're not sure if it's going to continue, we assume that it's not going to continue and allocate for it that way.
Any other questions? No? Okay. Well, thank you very much, Brian, and please thank your department. Tremendous work at a very difficult time, so thank you. And next on the agenda is Superintendent Cipriano, 10.5, official blessing and groundbreaking ceremony for Milton Number 8 Catholic Elementary School. Camilo?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm very happy to provide this information report through you to the board regarding the upcoming official blessing and groundbreaking ceremony for the new Milton Number 8 Catholic Elementary School. This groundbreaking ceremony will take place a week from today, Tuesday, September 26th at 11 a.m. Monsignor Kretsch, Chancellor and Vicar General of the Diocese of Hamilton, will preside at this ceremony. The invitation has been extended to the local clergy, all of you, our trustees, local MPPs, the Mayor of Milton, Regional Chair of Halton, as well as the President of Wecht Elementary. Most importantly, we will have students there from St. Benedict, and especially students in the Boyne community that will most likely be students in the inaugural school year. And I'm quite certain that the weather will be a lot warmer than it was for the groundbreaking at St. Gregory the Great. So I'm not a weatherman, but I hope it will be nice weather. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? None? Okay, thank you. Procurement activities update 10.6, Superintendent Nagoy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This report provides trustees with a summary of procurement activities for the prior year and an outlook on the upcoming initiatives for the next year. The tables starting in your package on pages 281 and 282, or page 1 and 2 of the report, list the competitive bids that were completed during 2016-17 and those that are planned for the next year or this current year. The current list of the sole and single source providers is attached as Appendix A to the report. Vendors of records are attached as Appendix B. Consultants and professional services are listed in Appendix C. All of these lists are usually reviewed as required, but also on an annual basis and updated as needed. Appendix D outlines the cost savings and the cost recovery and cost avoidance opportunities that were executed through last year. And during our budget season, as trustees will recall, we had a goal to achieve at least $250,000 in savings within this area through procurement. And we're happy to report that we've exceeded that goal, and we've achieved annual savings of $571,000 and cost avoidance and cost recovery of $148,000. We continue our efforts to increase collaborative spending. During 2015-16 year, we had in excess of $21 million in total collaborative spending. That's above the competitive bid opportunities, and executed contracts through last year on collaborative spending amounted to $1.3 million. We continuously review our internal processes and strive to have internal controls that are in compliance with the requirements and the regulations, and also to implement any recommendations from the data analytics audit that was performed last year. And Aaron and myself are happy to take any questions. Unfortunately, our manager of purchasing had a personal emergency and is not able to attend tonight.
Trustee Murray?
Yeah, thank you for the report. Could we get a listing at some point of the 35% of items that are not addressed in a collaborative way with other organizations?
A summary of those items?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Trustee Quinn?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, to the Treasurer, can you expand on the process by which a single source supplier is chosen? I see a paragraph here on how it works, but are there any what internal controls do we have on whom and what companies we're choosing as a single source supplier?
We have typically we're working with the department that is requesting a particular service and the vendor, and the manager of purchasing is always involved and looking out to see whether or not it qualifies for that. So there is a form in place which has very strict requirements. I'm not familiar with all of those requirements, but there's certain instances when an exception can be provided, and you can select a sole or single source provider, and that list has to be filled, reviewed by the purchasing manager, and if it meets that criteria, it will be added. If not, it is challenged, and quotes are required, or a competitive bid process is put in place.
Thank you. And do we have procedures in place or regulations in place that ensure that the person supplying the services are not related to anyone in the board in those types of controls in place?
Yes, we do. It would be a conflict of interest. As employees, we cannot be also business providers for the board. Pardon?
Perhaps your cousin could, so what kind of controls do we have in place for those?
I think all the requirements are going through a committee and the purchasing manager, so it isn't, decisions aren't made by a person who has a conflict of interest. So to the extent that someone would be a qualified provider of some sort of service, they are, and they may be related, they are allowed to bid or to put forth an application. We did have a data analytics review actually, and that was one of the parameters audited, and we did not have a conflict of interest from that perspective.
So my concern through you, Madam Chair, is a perceived conflict of interest rather than an actual conflict of interest. So if we have family members who are bidding on sole source opportunities in our board, that is a perceived conflict rather than perhaps a necessary conflict. So you're comfortable with the process that someone who was a family member of a board member could be a supplier and not going through the regular RFP process?
I would like to take this back to get more information. I don't believe any of our sole source, single source suppliers are necessarily in a conflict of interest, but I would like to take it back.
Thank you. We'll put that on the list.
We'll put that on the list. We will. Any other questions? No? Okay, thank you. So we're going to do now 10.7, Budget Report for September the 1st, 2016 to August 31st, 2017, preliminary. Superintendent Nagoy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this report outlines the preliminary revenue and expenses as of August 31st, and they are compared to budget, revised budget, as well as the last year end, the 2015-16 actuals. At this point in time, we expect to be about 100% expensed and to receive 100% of the revenues based on the revised budget. However, please keep in mind that this is very preliminary and there's still a number of transactions that need to take place. From a revenue perspective, we still have to reconcile the revenues and our enrollment, which will change the legislative grant as well as other grants received. Also, the municipal levies have to be reconciled. Currently, they do not reflect 2 months, July and August. They are received quarterly, and the next payment is on September 30th. So at this point, we're waiting for confirmation as to what those 2 months are so we can accrue. On the expenses, we are still putting through invoices, and as Ryan has mentioned in the previous reports, there's a lot of work that does occur through the summer, so there's a large number of invoices that are still being processed, so that they will be reflected in the expenses once we present the financial statements to the board, as well as we have to reconcile the salaries, accrue any salaries, and reconcile the benefits. We are going to present the final financial statements, audited financial statements, to the audit committee on November 16, and for board approval on November the 21st. And I'll be happy, Aaron and myself will be happy to take any questions trustees may have.
Thank you. Any questions at all? The business people? Nothing? All right, thank you. 10.8, Capital Projects Report as of August 31st, 2017, preliminary. Superintendent Nagoy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Similarly, this report also outlines the preliminary numbers for capital projects as of August 31st. There are still $860,000 in open purchasing orders that need to be finalized. Some invoices, as I mentioned, have to be processed. The work relates mostly to the construction of Milton number 8 and St. Gregory. Our EDC shortfall is $40.5 million, and it reflects in aggregate all the levies collected to date and less any purchases of sites or site development costs incurred to date. And Aaron and myself will be happy to take any questions trustees may have.
Thank you. Any questions at all? No? All right. Then we will go on to your last one. 10.9 Annual School Accommodation Update Report, Superintendent Nagoy.
This report outlines the projects planned or proposed during 2017-18 year and includes both the capital priority submissions and boundary reviews related. So it looks at new growth projects and next steps on the current school consolidation projects. And further, myself would be happy to take any questions trustees may have.
Thank you. Any questions on accommodation update? No? All right. Thank you very much. Moving on, we are now at 10.10, the Enneagram training. Superintendent Na?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. The report is outlined before you on a 6-day training session that took place on the Enneagram that I attended. It took place in Stone Ridge, New York, back in June. The Enneagram is a personal development tool that enables us to have more insight into ourselves and to others. It's a model understood and taught as a typology of 9 interconnected personality types. It's important to note that it is a cognitive model that is similar to many personality typing tools that are used in leadership training, such as the MBTI. Some of you would be familiar with the Myers-Briggs, or the DISC. The DISC, for example, is a tool that is used in the Good Leaders, Good Shepherds leadership program that many of the priests across our diocese have been participating in over the past few years. As I said, it's a personal development tool that is currently being used in our diocesan leadership formation program, and as well has been introduced into the Catholic Supervisory Officers Qualification Program. And I'll be looking to provide a couple of sessions for our leadership program as well. This tool, like the others, can help us to become more self-aware and recognize our own personal strengths and weaknesses. And of course, this would be beneficial for supporting our leadership development by supporting the conditions that every leader must meet in order to be effective, including some of the ones that I highlighted in the report. The self-awareness, leaders knowing what drives them, their own commitment to growth, and seeing the best in their staff and being committed to the growth of their staff. As I said, the training was a 6-day program. It took place, it was a 12.5-hour day sessions. And the report outlines the major components and objectives of that training program, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you would have.
Thank you, Superintendent Na. Trustee Quinn?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I was surprised to see this information report in our book this week. The best I could find, the most kind thing I could find to read about this when I was trying to figure out what it was my own was that it was a pseudo-scientific method. And I'd like the director to answer my question as to why we would have spent board money on something that is at best pseudo-scientific.
To you, Madam Chair, it was a leadership tool, so we're applying it as just as the Myers-Briggs or the DISC or no, we don't consider it a Ouija board or an occult or anything like that. It's a tool, and it's to help people self-reflect. I don't know what else people have, what you're referring to, but it wasn't meant to be anything other than a support.
But it's intended to be passed on to other leaders in our board, this training?
Just an understanding of how the tool can be a self-reflective way to look at your own leadership style. That's what it's for. And Lori can answer further questions about pseudo-scientific, but I'm totally comfortable with what the training provided to Superintendent Nahr.
Okay. Laurie, did you want to add anything?
Sure. I mean, you go into anything that's new to you to learn about it, and certainly I'd heard first about it through our diocesan leadership program, and went into this training. It was, as you can imagine, 75 hours of training over 6 days. But what it basically does is breaks down 9 different personality types, and they're very similar to what you would see in the Myers-Briggs. And it helps you to understand where you sit
and what influences you and what motivates you, and also how to be cognizant of within yourself to sort of stay at your healthier levels of development as opposed to slipping down into some of the more negative ones that can pull all of us down. So it's pretty comprehensive in looking at the different personality types, much like the Myers-Briggs, although I found this one to be more comprehensive. There's years and years of work that's gone into this, and as a participant in the program, and I think somebody who has over time really analyzed a lot of things that I participated in, it had great meaning for me, and certainly has helped me.
Do we know of any other boards, Laurie, that are interested in this?
I'm not sure about other specific boards, but certainly our diocesan faith formation program for leaders includes all of the boards in our diocese. Father Kahn is our Vicar of Education. He's on the program team with me in that program, so we've been introducing it there, and certainly it's been introduced in this past cohort at the Catholic Supervisory Officer's qualification, which would be training any of our Catholic superintendents across the province.
Thank you. Lisa?
Through you, Madam Chair, just to speak to a little bit about the program, I know that it has been cited in various scientific journals, and so there is definitely support in the literature for the program. I could, yes. Can I get the list for you next time? Yeah, no, of course. Okay. Sure.
Trustee Danko?
When is this being rolled out to staff?
I don't know if it is. Superintendent Nah?
So we have 2 optional sessions that will be taking place in the late spring, where I'll be sharing it as an instrument to look at yourself as a leader.
Okay, so that's invitational in the leadership program?
Yes, for
okay.
the candidates that are in our leadership.
So it's not going to be presented at a PA day or anything like that? No? Okay, thank you. Trustee Danko?
Just to follow up to that, is it planned to be integrated into the curriculum for students at any point?
Not that I'm aware of. Madam Director? No. Trustee Carabella?
I'm just wondering, because several staff went, so what would be the total cost of that professional development, in your opinion?
I'm sorry? Can you repeat the question?
What would be the cost of
for myself to attend that?
Yeah, for the leadership. Well, it was staff. It says several staff, I think. So was it just you?
It was just me.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was the cost of the course, which was $2,200, I think, and the cost of a hotel, which was about $1,500 for the 6 days. And then there was a $500 professional development application that I made through OXOA, which is our organization, and so that went towards the funding of that.
Trustee Quinn?
Thank you. In the report the articles we're going to get, I came across a number of references from the Conference of Catholic Bishops of the United States. Could you include their review of the Enneagram method, please?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
In providing us with information on that Enneagram program,
okay.
Could you include the review
Conference.
of the program from the Congress of Catholic Bishops of the United States?
Sure. Laurie?
If it's available, because as I understand it, that was drafted but never published by the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. So there might be copies of it floating around, but I don't think they ever actually officially put it out. But we can certainly look.
Questions on that? Any other questions? No? All right. Thank you, Superintendent Nah. Moving on to 10.11, the Audit Committee report to the Board of Trustees, and the Chair of the Audit Committee is Chair Rowe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Audit Committee met last week, and there were no action items at the meeting. A summary of the items discussed are in your report there. We talked about the Regional Internal Audit Team, called REAT, had an update on their progress, their current audit of the continuing education program. and it's expected to be completed by the end of November. We looked at the terms of reference for the RIAT and completed a review of the mandate of the RIAT. And we were also presented with the preliminary budget, which trustees had just have seen previous to my report.
Thank you. Chair Rowe, any questions? No? All right, thank you. The only other thing, we've got the miscellaneous information, 11.1 of CPIC. We don't have any correspondence. I do have a note to myself here that someone was interested in a verbal update on the uniforms taken off from last meeting. I'm not sure who would be speaking to that. Superintendent Cipriano, and then Trustee Quinn. You have a question?
Just on that matter, one of the things that we had discussed and the senior staff said they would look into was a quality audit of the garments provided by ISW versus what we saw in the RFP committee and what McCarthy's was providing previous. So if that's
Perhaps
being taken on or if it's coming. Thank you.
Yeah, I think perhaps Superintendent Cipriano can put some light to that. Thank you.
Sure, through you, Madam Chair. With respect to the request for the verbal update, it was my understanding that I would speak to two areas, one being the quality of the product and two regarding our contract with ISW and the terms of the contract with respect to how they've met their side. So in regards to the quality of the product, the uniform, and whether the materials and uniform products presented to the RFP committee is equal to the product on the shelves today, we had our manager purchasing visit all three sites. And in regards to the RFP committee, there were no concerns at the time and no notes in regards to the samples of the clothing provided. Like all the prospective proponents at that time who provided samples, the uniforms consisted of a cotton polyester blend. It was noted by the RFP committee that their uniforms, in fact, felt to be of good quality and attractive to the eye. Although it's almost impossible to determine if every article in every store that's being sold today by ISW is the exact same as the samples provided during the RFP process, our manager of purchasing, as I'd mentioned, Dan Tukalka, has confirmed that through his tours of the Burlington and Oakville and Milton facilities, a spot check of their short sleeve polos and rugger pants appeared to be identical with the labels stating the same cotton polyester blend as the samples provided for the RFP committee. In addition, we met in May of 2017 several senior staff with reps from ISW at the time to discuss some of the concerns that were being raised at that time. At that time, they also brought samples of their clothing, and we also tested those items, and they seemed to be identical or very similar to those that were presented for the RFP committee. At that time, all tops, the crested tops, pants, sweaters, polos, they were all brought for our review. It was also further explained that by SW at that time that the weave of their garments are a little different than what parents were used to with our previous provider, but assured us that our parents would find these garments to be as durable as McCarthy's offerings prior to that. With respect to the information on the contract and language in the contract regarding performance, as with any RFP, the board issues their termination clauses to protect the board from vendors who cannot meet the requirements of the RFP. Although there are no specific metrics that were stipulated in the RFP, and without really disclosing any specifics of the contract in a public form, generally speaking, the clauses that speak to performance and termination are relevant in this situation are around the areas of when a successful proponent breaches any provision of the contract, when a successful proponent delivers inferior quality services, or when the successful proponent fails to make timely delivery of the services. Most of our contracts also contain language that obligates the vendor to agree to maintain high standards with respect to product quality, price, and service. Typically, in the event of a decline in product quality, price, or service, the board does reserve the right to terminate those contracts. Having said all that, there was really no timeline for implementation other than being operational on January 1st, 2017, which ISW met that requirement. With respect to the quality and pricing, we as a board committee approved both. They have not increased prices, and as I'd mentioned earlier, there's no indication that their quality is of any lesser standard than what they presented. The areas of concern that's most obvious and continues to be is with respect to back orders. I think I'd mentioned previously that communication went out to all of our parents on August 31st, indicating that we were aware of the back orders. Our schools would make provisions for that and to allow students to come not in uniform if they didn't have full uniform complement. And just as an aside, I was the superintendent with the same responsibility in 2013 and 2014 when our previous provider, when we started 7 schools in 2013, I think another 7 elementary schools in 2014 from McCarthy's new to the uniform. And at that time, anecdotally, we did have many back orders as well. McCarthy's too had some challenges with demand because they had no purchase history. And so what we realized with our previous provider is that in year 2, they were much more able to meet the demand because they had a purchase history. And so we're hopeful that the back orders will be all resolved within 4 to 6 weeks of September startup, which brings us to early to mid-October, which is in line with our previous provider who in those first several years had back orders that spanned into late October at that time. We do hope that going into next year, ISW will now have purchase history of all of our schools, and we won't have these same types of challenges. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Superintendent. Any questions? Trustee Quinn.
Just one through you, Madam Chair. Would not the expectation, and despite your comments, when you said that there was no specific date mentioned in the contract, that we would expect that students would have uniforms in time for the first day of school in the fall, as opposed to sometime thereafter. So would they, in theory, they could potentially be in breach of the contract by not delivering uniforms as of the start of the school year?
Superintendent Cipriano?
Once again, as I mentioned, there are no metrics, and then it becomes a matter of level of delays. For example, many of our parents did experience delays in uniform pieces, but not full uniform pieces. So some would have not received a pair of shorts, or others a top. Most of our students received some pieces of the uniform enough to attend school for the most part. And once again, having said that, a large majority of our parents did not experience any delays. So we are talking about a percentage of parents that experienced delays. Considering that this spans all of our schools in uniform, which roughly speaking is about 25,000 of our students, I'm not surprised that the level of delays that we are hearing, you as trustees, myself as superintendents, and our principals, is at the level that it is because of the sheer volume of the number of new schools. Well, all of our schools are new to ISW. As I said, this is in some ways, respectfully and from a proportional standpoint, it is similar to those summers that we experienced, the 7 and the 8 elementary schools new to uniform. This is just at a greater scale.
So we can rely on improvement in the future?
I'm hopeful, and once again, I can't guarantee anything. What we hear from ISW, and we've met with their most senior leaders, and they are guaranteeing that they will, going into next year, especially now that they have purchase history, that we will have our typical delays, less than 1 to 2% of students, but not to the level that it was this year.
Thank you. Any further questions for Camilo? No? Okay, thank you. I don't believe we have any questions this evening, so we will need to go back into in-camera. So we'll have a minute or two break while we move into in-camera. Thank you. Yeah, I guess I was going to do it a little bit later. Yeah. No. Break, I guess.